Hi, everybody, and Happy New Year. Great to have you with us for NewsNite here on Friday, January 6th. Politics and the economy top the news this week. Mayor Plusquellic sworn in for a 7th term as jobs are announced that are leaving the city. We'll talk about it. What is with fracking and the earthquakes? Are they really connected? And what's ahead for all these land leases in 2012? And Akron's Tebow, Terry Bowden. Did the university spend too much money to try to save its football program? Those stories and more right now on NewsNite. A lot to get to this week, so let's meet our panel. Great to have with us this week Ed Esposito here from WAKR. Always great to see Steve Hoffman from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And a Happy New Year to freelance contributor and journalist Jody Miller. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year,
Eric.
Wow. Like a Muppets chorus there.
Should we have bought an apple for you today? Or?
Well, the politics begin with Mayor Plusquellic sworn in for a 7th term at the Civic, the shortest press conference of his I've ever been to. Actually didn't even talk to the press. But literally, he was done in like 7 minutes. I don't know if this is a precursor of,
That's a minute for every time he's been sworn in, right?
Something like that.
And actually, I think Dave Lieberth, as Master of Ceremonies, probably had more airtime than the mayor did.
Now that's shocking.
I would not count on this to set a precedent for the mayor, not talking when he wants to talk. So we'll see. I'm sure there'll be times in the future where he'll take up significant blocks of time.
He had the grandkids there. He had the family there. Everything was positive. And a minute into it, he drops in the gang of dissidents. Be on guard. I'm going to work harder than ever to shoot you down.
Eric, it's so unfair for you to bring this up. He just can't help himself. Every yin needs a yang. So, can you imagine what Don Plusquellic would be like if it weren't for the gang of dissidents? And now that you've got other people on city council now who are likely to give him a run for the money, I keep on hearing Donnie Kamer is the one who's kind of, that they're going to have to play whack-a-mole.
It's a good thing for Akron leaders to have people that are holding them accountable.
Is it not a good thing for people in authority to have to answer or have to, or have some foil to them in one way or another? Steve Hoffman, what do you think? Come on, you're getting ready to kick me.
No, I'm not. In a sense, it's sort of like Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty. This band of dissidents is, yes, they were behind a recall and they've been behind other things, but they really have not had the punch, certainly to win the mayor's office or to recall the mayor. I think it will be a challenge moving forward, and Ed is right in this sense. There are a couple of new faces on council who I think are not tied in closely with the administration. They're more, I'm thinking of Kamer and I think Hoke, who really come from strong neighborhood bases, a little more independent of City Hall at this point. And I think they're going to have to sort of learn how the big picture works. And there might be some clashes, and there might be some times when they hold the administration accountable. That's healthy. But to go back, as I've said before, to go back and plow some of this old ground over and over again, I think would be unfortunate, especially the old canard that the neighborhoods never get enough money from City Hall, which is just, as I've said,
and the money is devoted to downtown and downtown only, without realizing the fact that the resurgence of downtown helps the entire community. The business community, the cultural community, the arts community, and the neighborhoods have not been neglected by any means in this administration. So I think Steve is right. I don't think in any way, shape, or form it's unhealthy for any governmental body to have someone outside of its inner circle or its way of thinking to at least hold them accountable in some respects. What I was struck with, not only the brevity of the mayor's address, but the passion he still has, I think, for running the city, for wanting to make the city move forward. And that's good, because he did say, along with the whole comment about the dissidents, that he would work with anybody at any time to move the city forward. So that's a positive.
And we've had over the years of the virtual, evaporation of the Republican Party within the city. The demographics and the voting trends in the city have just, even Ward 8 is
It doesn't support a Republican Party, which
Yes.
so in effect what you wind up with are factions within the Democrat Party.
Right.
So I mean, you know, there's always going to be whoever's in power is always going to have someone against them. It doesn't matter if Warner Mendenhall were elected as mayor, there would be people that are against him. If Mike Williams had been elected mayor, there would be people that were, you know, would be against him that would have different agendas. So I think, you know, to Steve's point, I think it is healthy. It's healthy for people to question, why are you doing this? I think it'll be interesting to watch Kamer and Hoke in particular, because I don't know if I don't know if you really launch into this gang of dissident. You know, there's people that are going to be against you. Those are the 25%ers. They're always going to be against you no matter what you come out from. It'll be interesting to watch Hoke and Kamer, I think, to see if they truly align themselves with that or if they remain independent. There's nothing wrong with a member of council not affiliating with either the mayor's side or Marco Somerville's side or Warner Mendenhall's side or Bruce Kilby's side and just say, you know what, I'm on the side of the people I represent, and that's what people vote for from a ward councilman.
I saw as much passion out of him in that short speech as I've seen in 20 years of covering City Hall. But you mentioned those that he typically butts heads with. Paul Helinski, reelected, and he'll be there in 2012 as well.
Well, huge, too, and I thought it was interesting that Paul, you know, the mayor was reelected for his 7th term and Helinski was reelected for his 8th. So, you know, I mean, it's just, and granted, one's a 4 and one's a 2-year term, but the fact of the matter is both go before their constituency. The voter turnout among retirees and active police officers was relatively high. It was as high as it was 2 years ago when Helinski ran and had a close shave. This was not even close. So I think it'll be fascinating to watch that. It's kind of a repeat of what we've seen in years past. The argument clearly went to the FOP the last time. They went on just about every major issue, and they were the only bargaining unit in the city that got a raise, which the other unions paid attention to. You look at the firefighters right now. They want a better understanding. I'm sure they're asking themselves, why didn't we have a better understanding of the finances that the police did when they made their argument? So it'll be interesting to watch this. The talks, I'm told, on a new contract start in August. So, and there's a lot of time there to stake out positions, and there's a lot of time to see whether or not the economy improves and whether the city, you know, doesn't have to cry poor mouth and the FOP doesn't have to go get a forensic
Can we expect
accountant.
those two in new terms, Jody, to, you know, older, wiser, get along a little bit?
No. Because what you're dealing with, you're dealing with two men who are literally cut from the same cloth. They are passionate about
They don't think they are, though, do they?
But I think in watching them and observing them, I think they are. They are passionate about their constituencies. They are passionate about their staking out their position, and for that reason, they do butt heads. But I think it's healthy in that respect. Not that they respect each other in any way, shape, or form, but it's interesting to watch the dynamics play out here. And I think we will continue to see that as the union negotiates with the city.
I think clearly the reason behind Helinski's greater margin of victory is the proof's in the pudding. I mean, he went to the table. They pushed this arbitration process, and as we've discussed, you know, the nature of the beast in binding arbitration, in most cases, is splitting the difference, and that's kind of what Helinski gambled on, and he won. And I think it's an unfortunate trend. I hope something is fixed eventually with this binding arbitration process to soften it up a little, include other factors, because I think ultimately it is unfair to cities and their ability to manage.
A little over a year ago, we had 40 Akron police officers laid off. They were able to find middle ground and bring them back pretty quickly in less than a week. But the income has been hit this week. Front page story in the Beacon Journal, about 100 jobs leaving town, 50 from YRC. It'll stay in the county, the other 50 going out of state. But you know, the roadway plant that we all so know, seeing it right there off of Route 8, is going to be empty, bought by a developer now. Not good for them, the city, with jobs leaving town.
But the writing was on the wall years ago when YRC came in, I think, and bought roadway. You know, it's similar to what happened when Whirlpool bought Hoover, or when Newell bought Rubbermaid. You know, it's you know, the company that is purchased and the headquarters that they may in fact previously have had, that may go away, and unfortunately it's going to happen here. The good part of that story is in fact that Stu Lichter has bought that building and plans to you know, remodel it, redevelop it, and bring in some new tenants. So that is good. And not all of those jobs are going to be lost, because some of those people will be transferred to either the Richfield terminal or the Copley location, and others will in fact be offered positions in Kansas. But
Akron loses the income tax.
Akron does lose the income tax, absolutely. Although they do have a JED with Copley, so maybe that's. I think the roadway is in the JED.
You brought up the four-letter word. It always gets people talking. I'm surprised how big that building is, though. The Beacon reporting 270,000 square feet.
It's huge. Although to Jody's point about changes, all you have to do is get in a car and leave the city limits and drive up toward the Turnpike in Richfield. And what used to be, I think, a very healthy corridor for trucking really doesn't exist there anymore. So, the reality is, the roadway operation there was borrowed time.
And this confirms the mayor's larger economic development strategy. These old established businesses are going to be restructured. They're going to change. They're not going to stay the same. It's very difficult. So you have to have a mix. Sure, you want to save what you can of the old, but you need to push forward and find new things to do as well.
Let's expand on that now as we move the conversation to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
It may be one of the most misunderstood words across Ohio these days, fracking. It really means fracturing of the Utica Shale 8,000 feet below the surface. It is happening all across Northeast Ohio, guys. We saw hundreds of land leases in 2010, thousands of land leases now. Recently, earthquakes have shut down what is putting the water that comes out of the fracking back into the ground. We are ground zero right now for what is going on in fracking. Not that everybody knows exactly what it is, but people are making money and people are concerned. Where are we going with this?
Well, people are investing and speculating. So,
it's a high-stakes poker game.
Yeah, I mean, this is like owning property in Oil City in the late 1800s. It's like, it's like going into Southern California, Texas, and Oklahoma in the 20s when you were wildcatting, when people figured out that oil had value. So it's natural. The earthquake thing is disturbing. I think there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of scientific evidence that leans one way. I don't know if you'll ever get a hardcore, yes, this is why it happened, but there's enough evidence. I think the Kasich administration was right to clamp down on it as quickly as they did. I will say that the operator, had no problem with that. He was, totally behind doing that too. So those are serious issues, but there are places where fracking happens where you don't have earthquakes. So I think it just points out to how incredibly complex this process is.
Well, we should be clear, because the industry jumped on this right away and emphasized with the vis-a-vis the earthquake in Youngstown, which was serious. It was a 4.0, and that's at the point it was the largest. I think there were 11 this year. Hydraulic fracturing in and of itself, there's very, very little, virtually no evidence that causes earthquakes. The problem is each well generates millions of gallons of wastewater that's contaminated with all kinds of bad things, including some naturally occurring radioactivity from 8,000 to 9,000 feet below the earth. The question is, when this stuff comes back up, if the well is productive, what do you do with it? And the answer, a good answer, has been you inject it in these back into the earth. There are hundreds of these, somewhat less than 200, I think, of these injection wells in Ohio right now. They appeared to work fine. In this case, the well appears to be close enough to some kind of geological fault that the pumping this stuff back in is causing the rock layers to slip. There appears to be less and less controversy over that. That it's a theory, I guess you could call it, but it looks like a pretty good theory. So my hope is that as the state moves forward, we've put all the marbles basically in the basket of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to oversee oil and gas drilling. They have tremendous authority. Locals have none. So as we move forward, this is a good sign to me that the ODNR is onto this. But they've got to continue, in my opinion, as this process, we have all these permits, they've got to watch these wells. If you have one bad well, it's a disaster.
And don't forget, it's a two-part situation here, because we're not only dealing with the injection wells that Steve just talked about, where the wastewater, the brine, the chemicals is injected down into the earth to dispose of it. Because there really has been no real safe way to dispose of it. You can't put it in a river. You can't put it in a stream. You can't put it through a wastewater treatment plant, because it is that dangerous. So the one way they have been able to get rid of this byproduct from fracking has been to put it into the injection wells. But the larger issue here is the more than 1 million acres that now have been leased to companies like Chesapeake Oil and Gas out of Oklahoma, leased within Ohio so that they can come in and possibly put in up to 12,000 wells that would then be drilled using the fracking process to get the gas, the oil, and the soft gases from the Marcellus and the Utica Shale. The problem also has been that there is still some controversy from environmentalists about the fracking process. There are contentions that fracking, if it's not done correctly, can impact the water table, can impact aquifers. There is a movie that is very widely circulated called Gasland, where a gentleman whose water supply, he's got water coming out of his faucet, he can light it on fire because of the methane that's coming. And his contention, and the contention of a lot of environmentalists, is that if fracking is not done correctly, we can end up with a result that would be an environmental disaster for our air, for our water, for animals, for people all over the place. So it's right now, the state of Ohio is in a position where the economic benefits can be tremendous, but that's got to be weighed with the environmental impact that could be far-ranging and far more lasting
than the benefits.
But if the
environmental impact can be mitigated, is it worth the risk?
Yes. I mean, the issue here is not... The issue here is not black and white. It's not yes or no. You do have the technology to do this because you've proven that. You've also proven that if you don't do it right, it's disastrous.
Look at the BP oil spill in the Gulf. Same thing.
It's a nuclear power argument, but the fact of the matter is that you have a market here for oil which is ravenous, which doesn't change. No matter how much you talk about green energy, we're still a nation that runs on oil. You have to have oil. I think for an economy of Ohio, for people that own this property, for them to way to monetize their property to do that, it's unfair to expect them to say no. I understand, I think that, the environmental risks are high. So are the rewards. That doesn't mean you don't do it. It means you have to look at it very carefully, to Steve's point. And I think you would agree, Jody. This is not a thing that you just say, no, the risk is too high right off the bat, but it is something you say, you know what, we need to work slowly on this and do it right.
Right, and you've got to do the research correctly, because Ed is right. The economic benefits can be tremendous, but you just can't risk going ahead and saying, okay, let's do it without the adequate research to prove whether it can be done. And also the regulation that makes sure that if you are in fact drilling, you are using the most advanced technology and the best possible materials so that a mistake isn't made.
I think the big thing that I hear from environmental groups, it does relate mostly to the wastewater, the brine that comes back up. And there's some evidence that the brine and also there's rock and mud that comes back up too, which is put in landfills. And there's some environmental groups that are very upset about that because this rock is coated with all kinds of nasty things. Well, you put it in a landfill, and then there's leachate that comes out of the landfill, liquid, that is contaminated with radiation and God knows what from these fracking chemicals. This is a big fight over full disclosure of what goes into the fracking fluid, sand and chemicals mostly, but what kind of chemicals. Anyway, that leachate goes to water treatment plants, not to Akron's, not yet, but it is going. And so the question is, these wastewater treatment plants, are they equipped to handle liquid that has radiation in it, that has these chemicals in it?
It has heavy metals in it.
Yeah, and so the danger is this gets into the water supply, which eventually...
Or the Cuyahoga River.
Yeah, right.
Which eventually impacts all of our lives.
All right, we've talked about the what. I want to talk about the where as we move the conversation now to NewsNite.net.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
Hey, a programming note, we are very excited to welcome Neotropolis back for a new season, Tuesdays at 9, right here on Western Reserve PBS. Luke Frazier is the new host. They'll look at the globalization of our economy here in Northeast Ohio, plus the growing technology. And you can follow Neotropolis at neotropolis.org, as well as on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. A new face for Neotropolis, a new face, guys, for the University of Akron football program. A real name, Terry Bowden.
Good
This
segue.
is like awesome.
Wow. I'm impressed.
I'm so happy Luke Frazier is coming to this show. Oh, wait a minute, you're talking about Terry Bowden now.
I'm talking about Terry Bowden. Big money for a program that has really struggled and definitely did not move forward. in the INL 2 years.
I'm confused. Is it really big money? I mean, isn't he getting paid relatively the same thing that INL was?
Yes.
Yeah, but that was big money.
It's still big money.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in a MAC school.
Okay.
For a big name.
If he wins, is it worth it?
That's what I'm the host.
Well, I want to know what you think.
If Akron goes to a bowl game and gets on national television, I think everybody in the university will tell you it's worth it. That the program needs to be as strong as the basketball program has shown with 20-win seasons for the last 5 years. Or the soccer program. How did they do it, though? How do we get a big name like that, and should a MAC school be spending that much money on football?
They don't have a choice. They have one of the worst football programs in their division. It's not the MAC, the NCAA Division I. It's horrible. I mean, the fact you only won 2 games. You want to talk about how terrible the Browns are? Look at Akron football. And it's just, you've got this gorgeous facility in there. You have top-notch. You talk to anybody around the country when they come in and look at the University of Akron facilities. They are just flat blown away. When pro teams come in to play in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, they want to practice at the athletic facility. You have people coming in from around the country to use their golf facilities. I mean, it's top-notch. You have a gorgeous new stadium. The problem is you don't have butts in the seats. You don't have butts in the stands. If you have a winning program, if you build it, they will come. And then that's why they're spending all this money on Terry Bowden.
There is no question in my mind that there's a disconnect, I think, in our society in general, okay, about the relative importance of athletics, whether it's at the professional level or at the college level or even at the high school level sometimes, and the weighing the importance of athletics versus academics. You have a university here where they can afford to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a football coach, and yet you've got professors and teachers and part-time faculty that are barely making minimum wage in some cases. Be that as it may, Ed's absolutely right. You've got a gorgeous facility, and what draws people anymore and students anymore to a university? It's not necessarily only the academic programs that they have. It's the sports programs. It's the amenities. It's the buildings like a student union or a student center, where you've got all the bells and whistles. So it's, I think, a part of the overall strategy to improve Akron U's, the University of Akron's reputation nationally.
I think there's some soft value, if you will, to a successful program that's hard to measure. It brings publicity, as Ed's alluded to the school. I guess that's hard to measure. I mean, clearly it's a good thing, not a bad thing. I think, though, based on some of the things that the Knight Foundation has looked at and others that have looked at sports at the college level, this is a tough row to hoe. I mean, to really have a program that generates hard dollars, that pays for itself or even contributes to the university's bottom line in a significant way, there are very few schools that, it's not impossible. It's just very difficult.
They're the creme de la creme.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues, and I'm not a huge Akron U football fan by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I suppose if they started winning, I might go. I'm a fair weather fan, I guess. But look around at the high school level. There are these tremendous athletes, and if we could just capture some of them and get them to go to Akron U, I mean, there's a lot of talent in football talent in Northeast Ohio.
One of the criticisms I heard from high school coaches was that INL not offering scholarships to some of the local stars was keeping them from getting bigger scholarships, because Michigan State would come to Akron and say, well, gosh, if Akron didn't even offer you a scholarship, there must be something we don't know about you, even though your talent was so good, that INL was so focused on California and Florida, trying to get kids to come to Akron, that it eventually became his downfall.
Well, you look at, historically, our side of Ohio and western Pennsylvania has been a cradle of smash mouth football. I mean, seriously, you go down to, the Californias and the Floridas and the Texas, that's where we're going to talk sports talk now on NewsNite. That's where the speed always came from. But your linemen always came. I mean, the greatest quarterbacks in the game, with all due respect, came out of Pittsburgh area, with Montana and Marino. You just look at the talent that's around here. They're absolutely right. I mean, the rip on Ianella was he didn't even return coaches' calls, because high school coaches will call college coaches and say, you really need to come take a look at this, because they're invested. They want that kid to go on and do well. They want that kid to have an opportunity at a school. There's some tremendous talent here in this area. I mean, you see it with Beanie Wells and other people that play on that. Jason Taylor just retired from the Miami Dolphins. He played at the Rubber Bowl, which was a dump. You know, now you have a place that, quite frankly, is a palace compared to a lot of other football programs. You got a name guy like Terry Bowden. They just picked up this guy as his defensive coordinator that used to be with UNC, had been the head coach at North Carolina or North Carolina State. So, yeah, I mean, these are big-name people coming in. So, you know, if you want a big-name presence, if you want to say, I'm going to inject some excitement into this program, what better way to do it than with a guy whose name is Bowden?
How long till they win?
Let me just add one more thing to Ed's comment,
okay.
and no disrespect
we got
intended.
The 2-minute warning.
All right, no disrespect,
football.
no disrespect intended. But Akron U tried this, what, 10, 15 years ago with Jerry Faust.
25.
Okay. Well, oh my God, time flies, and it didn't work. So I'm just hoping it does work. When will they win? I don't know. Depends on who they've got on the team now and what Terry Bowden's able to do in terms of getting personnel on that team.
If they won 2 games next season, they just doubled all the games they won this
Absolutely.
The short answer to your question is not soon enough.
Not soon enough.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't soon enough for Rob Ianello.
Quick minute and a half left. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask Jody what she thinks of Michelle Bachmann not coming to Ohio to campaign as we now look at the March primary. We're going to see the Republican candidates pretty soon, and you won't get to see Michelle Bachmann.
Smile. Good. You know, Michelle Bachmann wanted a miracle, and you know what? Her God didn't deliver one for her. And
that is really
I am so. No,
you
it
should
wasn't.
be ashamed of saying that. That's not right to do that.
Oh,
to
come
denigrate
on.
someone's faith like that is wrong.
I'm not denigrating her faith.
That's a cheap shot to do that. Your
Went
God,
on national,
come on, that's not right.
She went on national politics and said, "I'm expecting a miracle. We're going to turn this around, and I'm going to win." And you know what?
And she didn't get a miracle.
One.
That's okay, but to say her God like that, come on, Jody.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect to Michelle Bachmann's God or her faith. Okay. But I think it was wrong, and I'm really glad she's not here because as bad as I think Sarah Palin was and could be as a potential candidate, Michelle Bachmann is even worse in my estimation.
We'll be seeing the candidates because they'll be coming here in the coming weeks, and we'll definitely talk about it here on Newsnight. Jody, Steve, Ed, what a show. Great to have you guys back. Welcome to 2012. Have a great week, everybody. Remember, you can rewatch this entire broadcast and see more of our blog over at newsnight.net. See you right here next Friday for Newsnight. Good night.